I think we're good. Are we good? Is that cool? Nice. What Tensei? I have missed it. Somebody remind me to pay attention. The second screen and the world I spawned in was very weird. Besides, it was pretty nice. Yeah, streaming is super good, man. Really fulfilling. I'm glad you had a good time, and it's gonna get better from now on. Let me know if you need any resources or anything from that. I'm sure your computer is way better than mine. But if you want to know like chat apps and stuff like that, I run a very basic kind of stream. The laptop? Yeah, I run a laptop as well. Let's just make a slight little darkness, little change. Not so much. Maybe I want to leave that little area quite light, but this internal shape over here, I want to maybe shift darkness and. It's something to consider. Maybe I don't like the fact it's going to impact my read partially. Maybe a touch of warmness in there. A touch, but not really all that much. Oh, somehow this is on a separate layer. Yeah, I kind of like the previous. Certain areas I like, certain areas I do not like. It is getting it closer to the reference though, so that's something. But I like the version of it a bit. We'll commit to it regardless. It's been one layer, so I don't want to cheat. Slightly up the redness, for example, over here. I want to be a little bit careful about this kind of idea because you see kind of how that affects the piece by kind of using a little bit of a modification right there. It's a little bit too heavy-handed, I feel. So we can do an alternative version of this, which is kind of similar, which is we just grab a grainy brush. That's what I do for my mild modification. Just grain over it slightly. A little bit of that darkness that I'm looking. I have to do something about the second screen because I use my old laptop first. Laptop as a second screen functions only over Wi-Fi. But the stream quality was dookie. You can use your phone if you want to reach out or something on the second. Very possible. Also seen a bit DT. Buddy. So I can use this little it's not an airbrush really, it's a graphite brush. I can use it to slightly modify value. And it's a little bit grainy, so it allows me to not break the whole texture idea that I have. Because if I was to airbrush over this, that sentence to any semblance of nice brushiness. So I try to use this kind of grainy brushes. A little bit more light down there. Edge of this little lip right there. Also want to throw in. I want this to be more of a shape, you know, because again, you want to make statements. You don't want to make like small little notions. Always make statements of what you do. Make them more of a statement, but making a much stronger shape right there. Green overlays, what things have changed. Still says tens though. I mean, I still say tens though. Still the old days in Kate stream. Hey, look guys, I'm live. Fog. Live. This would be a light value around here. Again, sample when you can. So I just took the value near the eyes and I just put it down there near the nose. Enough. This would be a dark value underneath because it's downward facing a plane. Again, the more you really think about your planes, the more you portray your planes in your canvas, the stronger your read's going to be. You're allowed to because you know me for a long time. I miss hanging out in Kate stream, you know? That was before I was even a streamer. Really miss those times. Yeah, I would not, no, not that I hate like what's happening right now, but I love it for different reasons. Time back then, very special. So at the time where I was so super unsure, Been looking at the nostril for like 10 solid minutes, but you should say something if it's bothering you. You know how it is on my stream, right? All allowed. Vocalize your frustration, my friend. But some things are definitely not going to be perfect. And they're intentionally for that same reason, because again, not after too much perfection. Artist here. I'm gonna soften up this edge, by the way, because it's softer. It goes harder up here, usually softer over here, because this curves and it's much more stark. Always a logic, it's always a reason. I'm gonna introduce some blues near the eyebrow, I think. Let's see how it plays out. So it plays out, maybe it plays out well, maybe it doesn't. Darker. Is that a Moon Moon emote? I don't watch Moon Moon. I used to think that he was the guy that had what is it called? A Shiba Inu face. I used to think that was Moon Moon. But apparently that's not true. Only me whose stream is pausing and loading. Somebody confirm, please. Sorry about the quality. My internet has been, because I sound home, so sometimes it's going. I have returned. Nice progress, James. Pog, thank you. The stream has crashed multiple times, unfortunately, but it's alright. This I want to translate into more of a reddish idea. Reddish and lighter. Well, that's the current value. This is redder than the current value. This is lighter than the current value. Check. A little bit of a break is that particular area. Then we also have a bit more red on the underside, indicate the curvature of the lip. Banana. What's your name today? Is it just straight up your regular name because we're not doing names anymore? Don't call any of your names, by the way. You're starting to talk like a czar? Oh my goodness, don't insult the poor lady. What are you doing? This is a left downward facing plane, so again, grab left downward facing values. Fine. The stroke over here is not really giving me too much information, right? What is that stroke telling me, by the way? It's a stroke that indicates something in the lower half of the mouth. What are the planes of this area? Curious, these are the planes of this area. It's 1, 2, side plane, bottom plane, then chin. There's a plane underneath the lip. So we're gonna have to make a couple of changes here. Biggest one being that since these planes are almost the same plane, I'm gonna equate these two planes together. Happening here. And this is why structure is so important. Solve things really. It's also a light shape, so lights are gonna go. That easy enough. I'm gonna get rid of this value entirely. It's just misplaced. Get rid of it. Grab the light value that needs to go here appropriately, which is something like this, I think. Downward facing light plane, a left facing light plane, so it's this value. Now it gets put in there. Ever so slightly. Fine. We update the shape around it to show the form of the orbicularis. Away. Away. How we saw the particular area. So a bunch of very like specific changes, but you see how like the structure kind of aids that process and gets us the goose at the end of the day. So at the end of the day, you want the goose. Oh yeah. Right facing plane, a little bit of red going in here. I can choose to develop this area a little bit more to show perhaps a bit more of that the nodal area, but since it's in the shadow, I don't want to spend too much time in there. I think the shadows themselves can go quite simple. I do want to make a statement here. I do want to make a statement. Wow, I do want to make a statement over here. A little bit of light. Again, that needs to be more of a statement, so I'm gonna make it like this. Just that strong light shape right there. Again, the thing about painting and when you're making like decisions as an artist, very important to have those decisions rather look intentional. You want them to be intentional decisions. So when you go halfway, half and half, that can really affect the piece. It can look like it's an accident. It could look like you're an amateur. You didn't mean to do something, and that affects the piece. You want to have strong, intentional statements on most of your work. This can go more bluer. Go more bluer it is. Sure, the shadows have less detail value or something ideally. Depends on the way that you want to interpret things. Currently, the shadows do have a lot less detail, but you have to understand on this particular piece, the shadows themselves make up very little of the total area on the piece. So I'm managing my detail based on area of focus. That's how I'm interpreting this. A lot less focus here, a lot more focus. But it's a way of interpreting the. In general, is that like a rule of thumb? To a certain extent, yes. You do want to be thinking about level of detail, separate light and shadow. You don't have to though. These will still hold. They are a little bit more muddy. But again, if you want to have a greater separation of light and dark, and if you have any sense of a value hierarchy, then indeed you will not have that much more in the lights versus shadows. Bye, Ona. See, I told you guys we shouldn't have called her names. Gone forever. Red's right there. Just to bring back that subsurface. Oh, subsurface, you gotta put it in the. No. That blue needs to be unified even further, so unified down here. So a lot of that blue has been costing us a bunch of time, by the way, because we have to always constantly try to unify. But that's just the thing, right? Because we need to problem solve what's not on the reference. Zaki, good to see you, man. Okay. But it works out well. Easy. This is going to be your light value in the light. It's going to be a light value in the shadow. In mild variations. They could even paint in slight ideas over here. I'm going to go cook dinner. Okay. Cheers, man. Probably going to go offline quick. Thanks for hanging out. Always. Throw in a little bit of textual information. Not all that much. I'm not too concerned. There. Just filling this area out a little bit more. Like you said, one more piece? Yeah, I know, but I'm really tired. Usually better if I have one continuous go at the stream, but then when I take breaks I realize just how exhausted I am. I might actually do one more, but I'll probably do it off stream. I'm gonna paint, you know? That. Easy. We're gonna grab a palette knife. We're gonna just play around with some of these edges really quickly, because it can really give us a little bit of that silky kind of smoothie texture that we're looking for. Ooh, this is something that does not agree with. Something like that. Some organic shape, you know. Not too particular with what I get, but something decent. This is a difficult beast because this brush was not designed to be used this way, but I kind of like breaking the rule a little bit with it. I think it's cool. I like the organicness that it kind of gives you. What is that emo combination? Jesus Christ. Nice. A couple of things that I want to change here. I want to slowly affect the read of those eyes. I want to slightly darken up this area right over there, because the eyes are in shadow. Heavy, beautiful lids. Important for us to kind of just muddy that ever so slightly, like that. And I want to strengthen that shape that's over there as well. Beautiful shape near the eye. It's a shadow being cast by the hair, so slightly strengthen that up as well. As well as there's a little form shadow down here. So a little bit of the structure of the eye can be improved upon. Rianne, how's it going? Go follow Rianne. Great artist. Doing okay, Rianne. A lot of life things happening. are preventing me from being able to paint as much as I'd like, but are painting regardless, because that's just what you do, man. Your life is not dictated by what happens to you, it's dictated by your response to what happens. You get to decide at the end of the day. Most things. Hey, thanks for the congratulations, I appreciate that. Now that we got into the design school. Another chapter. Do so hope I can bring you guys along for that little journey. Very much a world out there where I will not be able to stream for the entire year, which would kind of suck, but I mean, you guys would support me giving that up, and definitely give it up. Professional. But we'll see. But hey, when I come back, I come back saying, hey guys, I just got hired by a AAA studio, and that would be a fun thing to come back to, right? So we'll see. But hey, if in the event that I will not be streaming, you will guarantee that I will make it every second count. Infinite Destiny, hi there, love the work you're busy with. Thank you. Face reveal at graduation, maybe. A little vested into this face idea, huh? What brush are you using? Love the texture. There's a combination of a bunch of things. Let me pause the timer and show you, but a lot of it comes from incidental edges. So first of all, whenever we talk about texture, when we talk about brushes, always mention, please understand the fundamentals of edges, because without that, none of this makes any sense. So if you're struggling with edges, if you don't particularly know how to achieve soft, hard, and lost, then look up tutorials on that, look up Bougie's videos, etc., etc. The actual brushes, I can show you here. Right over here, there you go. So the actual brushes are right over there. So I'm using a pack called the Digital Atelier pack on Krita. Show what the brushes look like. So if you want to make your own, you can. First brush, my majority blocking brush, is this one over here. A fairly simple brush. It's got a little bit of blending, a little bit of dynamic on it, but basically how it works. So it has a little bit of dynamic. You see that little interpolation happening there. A couple of colors. It has this kind of roughy canvas texture edge right there. A little bit of opacity and a slight bit of blending to it. That's the first brush. So a lot of combinations in there. Second brush is a similar variation, a little bit less in terms of the crazy variance in the brush edge, but it's interesting. The third one, a lot more in the direction, so it has a lot of the similar features, a lot more smoother, and it does a lot more sampling locally, so I can use this to kind of get a softer edge if I need it. It blends a little bit better. Gives me a lovely lost sort of edge right there. That's a third brush. The fourth brush for hard light shapes is this. A very simple, very hard brush with a bit of grain to it. Again, to maintain that canvasy kind of texture. See that over here, here, here. Brush. You'll see a little bit of this brush over here, which is just a standard charcoal kind of grainy brush that I use to adjust certain values. For instance, you see that adjustment right over there. Adjustment right over here. Okay. There's a little bit of this kind of brush. It's an acrylic rake brush, a very standard rake brush. So the other examples of that I have all over. I really enjoy rake brushes. So you'll see combinations of these throughout the painting in different areas here and there. And beyond that, I believe I have used this brush a couple of times in this piece. It's similar to the graphite brush, just a little bit more blocky like. And the idea is I use that brush over here, over somewhere over here. I actually remember my strokes. I believe it was right here. You can see a little bit of that same brush edge. And that was, again, to get a softer, this over here is a harder version of this over here. So again, you see what I'm looking for is not the brush itself, but see how I'm kind of thinking about it? I'm thinking about this as a softer, kind of grainy texture, as opposed to thinking about it as a specific brush. Because what I care most about is the edge that actually results from the usage of these brushes. That's what I really care about, just the edge that results in the usage of these brushes. Also, occasionally to defocus, I've used some smudge brushes, but that's about it. So altogether, maybe about 15 brushes. Not too many in the grand scheme of things. I've gone upwards of 30 in pieces. But it's just in the effort to try and achieve a much more organic looking painting. I feel like we've somewhat accomplished that. So for instance, just to walk you through a couple of strokes that I'll do. Currently, this little stroke over here looks a little bit too hard on the left side of the shape, because a shape is named like a crucible of value and color. The left side of that shape, I wanted to be a little bit more smoother. If you're wondering why, it's because the shape of this particular area on the nose, it's called the greater alar cartilage of the nose, or the ball of the nose, right? This little area, it curves around like that. So a shape that's sitting right over here, I want to give you the notion of it curving. You might say it's a very small thing, but remember, a painting is a combination, a gestalt combination of a lot of small things. So I go in there, I say, okay, I need to be smoother. So maybe a blending brush, maybe something like this. Or maybe the way that I'm thinking about it right now is I'll retain some of the texture by using some of this little blending brush over here, blending kind of painting brush. And I slightly soften up that shape, left-hand side. There you go, that's a change. That to that, and I like that a bit better, right? So most of the time I will not zoom in that much. I often, but the entirety of the piece, this entire piece has been done with zero zooming because I don't believe in it too much. Not really in the scope of the paint right now. Zoom in too much. So from that to that, you see that looks a little bit more right. That's the idea. Okay, so that's what I go for. Maybe I'll do one more stroke for you. Let's say that this area, I want to bring in more pink. So it needs to be a softer edge because it's quite soft on the reference, also logically speaking. So I go two ways, right? Talk about what it is on the reference and talk about why it is, just in general, the principle behind it, because it helps a lot to really structure your mind, because you don't want to be a slave to your reference. Otherwise, you can always draw what you see, and that may not necessarily be the best version of that painting in your head. So again, why is this a small transition? Because this entire plane of the forehead is very, very flat. So we can consider the value transitions to be quite uniform right over there. So I want to have a nice gradual change. So gradual meaning softer. So we can, I could do it with this brush over here, get a softer edge. B, I could use a similar softer edge like that. For example, use a brush like this, contain that. So many ways of doing it. This is also softer edge, right? So ultimately, it depends on what I choose to include there. See, that's kind of cool, right? Even though I haven't used this edge over here in this entire painting, I picked a random brush that was soft, and it still works to a certain degree. It all has an impact. I want to keep my brushes somewhat relatable to each other, which is why I tend to use a brush from this set, because all the brushes use a similar engine, just because I want to have some brush cohesion. But you don't have to, because a lot of paintings that I've done, they don't include this idea. They have very wide and diverse brush strokes from various different types of engines and whatever, and that's totally fine. That aids in a different kind of read. So there we go. We're gonna soften up that edge a little bit that it needs softened, and we can do that idea, or we can change it slightly lighter, slightly pinker. Try again, see if I like it. And that's overall the process, right? So I spend very little time on thinking about the actual brush, and more time about thinking about the edges that I want to get. Then how do I translate that edge into my paint? That's the idea. Hopefully that makes some sense. You're a teacher and see you love what you're doing, have a passion for it, never stop teaching. I don't know if I'm a teacher, but I'm definitely a very passionate painter. What's funny is that I don't even plan on doing this for a job. I don't plan on doing illustration. I'm going into concept, which is fun because I will always, at the end of the day, be able to come back and still paint and have a lot of fun with it, which is great. I really like design, by the way. I want to work as a designer. Or as a concept artist rather. So I merge this, so again I work everything on one layer. So I made it separate in case I did something terrible. But Jazz, how's it going, man? Good to see you. And usually I keep these brushes right next to my canvas, so I can just go back and forth without too much of an. But hopefully that was helpful. That's the idea behind doing these things. So you see, there's not much in the notion of blending and things like that. It's mainly just like thinking about the edge type and then placing an appropriate block of color there, block of valued color. You can't say color without saying value, because value is one of the components of color. If you're wondering what the others are, it's hue and saturation. Color, saturation, value. I'm sorry. So a couple of things I want to do here. So again, same idea. I want to soften up. So this is like finishing things to my painting, right? So I want to soften up this eyebrow because it's a little bit too much like a line, too much like a heavy line. So I want to slightly soften that up. I want to increase the effect, the overall read of the shadow. So really important thing to make your paintings look more traditional is the idea that don't think about things so distinctly. Don't think that this is my eyebrow value, this is my cheek value. Because I could do something like this, use the exact same value and bring it down into a shadow shape. And it's perfectly valid, you know? You don't really question it all that much, and it gives you that kind of painterly look. Because realistically, because of how we're conditioned to look at paintings, you don't have nearly as much control in traditional work as you do in digital. So one of the things we have to kind of artificially account for is the fact that we couldn't do certain things if this was traditional. So we just kind of make things a little bit more harder for ourselves by using a limited amount of control. So not going in there and specifically picking out those values is what we could have done, but we choose not to do it because, again, it's serving the overall idea of this piece, which is to retain lovely, intentional, those traditional looking strokes. Sorry, my throat's really dry. I need to take it. Bring in a couple more. The nice thing about hair is that hair is ambiguous, so we can basically do whatever we want with this. I want to show a slight effect of the hair. Again, slight effect, meaning a nice little soft brush, but not an airbrush, because you see how this airbrush kind of breaks some of the texture in the piece. I don't want that to happen. I want to see visible strokes for the majority of the piece. So I'll do that change with grain instead. So a little bit of a grainy change. That kind of adds a little bit of weight on my hair. Hair looks like it's properly imposed on top of the skin. And same thing, I think this value over here is getting a bit too light, I feel like. So overall, I want to start just dimming this value. This I think I can use an airbrush for. That area to begin with. Just managing what I have, you know? And now that I have that dark, what I could do quite easily here is I could just select that value, go a little bit brighter, go a little bit bluer, and now I have a value that I can use for my reflected light coming from down there. So I just pick a brush that is soft, paint in that reflected light value. A little bit lighter. Like I could just show some planes right there. How cool is that? A very slight change, but really important one. Really kind of shows again some sort of calmness down here. I don't really care about this little shadows being too harsh. I'm okay with it. Something we could do over here is we can just go ahead and defocus some of these darks over here, just on the bottom side. I want them to be sharp. You see, the purpose of these darks is to really indicate this area, really sharpen up that edge, but not too much on this area over here. So this shadow over here on the bottom side, it can be soft down here. It's fine. Still have the same read. The read doesn't change, but overall it reduces the harshness of that transition, which could genuinely be of a lot of importance to me, because on skin particularly, the transitions aren't that harsh, so good way of kind of control. And I can make the shape a little bit better. So Lariva, who we have studied in the past, he does this so boldly, you know? He does it with large, beautiful sweeping strokes. He does almost like line strokes. He does this kind of idea on some of his paintings, and I just love looking at it. Like it's super bold. I'm not at that stage yet, because I'm always a little bit conservative with actions like that, but it's always something to consider, right? That's possible. I'll keep it in the back of my mind. Because if you choose to default a piece, meaning you just do it in the way that you think is good, it'll be a very, very safe piece. Sometimes that's not what you want, right? You want a safe piece. Right over there is sufficient. I'll do a couple of final little changes here. Eyebrow back in there. I want to actually paint in the caruncle because I have not already. So that I can just appropriate the value that's already there. We'll choose a softish but still suitably hard brush for this item. Hardness back in there. Doesn't have to be specific, but just a single dark stroke will tell you where it is. Fine. I want to make more of a statement because, again, statements are important. So something like this is what I would consider a nice little statement here. Like a nice, beautiful kind of curving shape going into the bottom lid. like that, for example. That really adds a lot of value to the painting, you know? Because it makes it nice and intentional, very well-defined, clear shape on the canvas. I feel like it has a lot of value. Anything down here, you know, doing something like this. Like, of course, we're not going to keep this, but like doing something like that instead of doing something like this makes it so much more powerful. The impact it has is so much greater. Because it's gone from being an afterthought to being a decision, because you can see the thought behind it. It really does make a difference with the overall painting. It genuinely does. Because it's been designed. It's been designed well. Never let that incidentalness take over your painting. Everything needs to be intentional. Even the unintentional aspects of your painting must have been they must be set up by intentional decisions. I really believe in this. Otherwise, it's difficult to play around with things you don't understand. Once we figure out like the fundamental behind it, this little green is always here. Once you figure out the fundamental, so much stuff for you. Darkness down there. This can go maybe a little bit more redder. Dark in there, and the shadow over here can be a little bit. Bring about shadow here as well. That blue is nice and integrated, by the way. More that idea. I don't want this edge to be super like, oh, look at me, I'm the edge of the hair. I want it to be a little bit more muddy. Because whenever things are too strongly stated, you don't want to beat your audience over their head with your idea. So sometimes to unify, you don't put things more. Take away a little bit. It's clean. Happy little mistakes? Yeah. No happy little mistakes? Now the thing about happy little mistakes, again, so this is the idea behind that, is that you need to, so mistakes could be, or accidents could be the fact that, you know, you're not doing something correctly, right? But it should be not doing something correctly, or maybe an imperfection in a correct decision should be a happy little act. It can't be like, I randomly got a sputtering of blue in my, what's supposed to be a warm color, and I'm gonna keep it. That's just nonsense. So, like, if you're gonna have incidentalness, it needs to be kind of really harnessed well. Like, great artists, they set up well for their things that kind of artificially come out in their piece that they plan for. They set up for it. That's the big difference. It's so easy for us to fall into this trap of saying, yeah, everything in my piece is it's just my style, you know, it's just my style of doing things. That's why things look a little bit weird, but not really, you know. If you can't control something, then it's your style, or is it just personal predilections that you cannot control? Well, then what happens if you need to turn that off, right? Turn that idea off. And suddenly it's not a happy little accident anymore. Like I said, it needs to be controlled. You got to set up for these kind of things. It's a really good painting, by the way. I really do like it. These are the kind of paintings that I like painting, but I don't get to do them very often because I don't tend to, like, I learn a lot about the method, but I always like to kind of shift over to different stuff once I get comfortable with the method. Too bad. I think this is roughly about 2 hours so far. But what I would want to probably do it a lot sooner if not for all the technical problems. But I don't care. It's a 2-hour piece, right? Whatever way you slice it. Important to be honest about it as well. Light up there. This reminds me of, you know what this reminds me of? It reminds me of one of my favorite artists on this platform, Kate, aka Bellatrix. It reminds me of her Clementine piece. Oh, was it in freckles? I completely forgot about them. That's my word. Maybe we put them in. It's escaped my mind. Okay, we'll put some time into them. My bad. The kid's gonna like this piece. More and clean. Alright, so anything else that I gotta do? I think it's fine. Outlet, this reminds me of an art journal piece. I don't know what it is about it. Maybe the general facial like topography. Giving a little bit of art germ vibes. I think it's a composition if anything else. I really think it's a composition. I want to get a bit more of a saturated element on the background. I'm sorry, on the sides of the piece, I think. So in that respect, slightly give it a little bit of this multiply. Have on a brush. Also, if I want to make any modifications towards the edge, comes the same little graphite soft brush. Don't want to ruin this entire piece by having very, very flat strokes. I want there to be noise. Noise indeed we will paint with. This is like a harsh little fold right there, but I will choose not to paint it in because it's a little bit too hot. Like way too hot. I don't want to be putting that in. A little bit too distracting. That's some fold I did for context, but not nearly as much as it is in. Okay, we can do a little bit of those speckles. Let's just do a little bit of them, right? We'll do them as an afterthought, maybe. Select a couple of shapes here. Timer's off? Yeah, I know. It went off when I retransitioned back. You put it on. But since it was inaccurate to begin with, I just didn't bother. But apologize for that. It's been a while since we had a crash like that. It's usually just the internet, you know. Come back. Ooh, that's not working. Maybe something in my pastel brush help me here. What is the nature of that? It's just noise, to be honest. I think just noise would suffice. But what sort of noise, though? How do I want to filter that noise through? And have it dappled? That, perhaps? I think that would suffice. Okay, so let's just form this properly. That was just for testing. Theron what was it? Felagund? Felagund, how would you say it? Theron is correct. With Felagund, with like a bit of a Nordish influence. How's it going? Anyway, for the freckles themselves, don't pick a different color. It suffices to just pick something that's existing on the canvas that's relatively in a similar temperature. Okay? The idea is that we don't want it to kind of read too harshly. So don't think that the freckles need to be a different color. As long as it's darker, it'll still read. That's totally fine. Darker. So basically I just sampled this color over here off of the subsurface. And that's what I'm going to be painting in these selected areas. Also the first time that I'm using a different layer. Everything thus far has been on the same layer. I simply want to, I don't want to ruin my painting with these. I think I'm finished with my MS painting. When I say finish, I really, it's time to stop. You want to share it? See you, man. Polly, you're my freckles guy, by the way. You're going to tell me to keep the freckles or not. I'm going to slightly just corrupt some edges. Just going to do some edge corruption. That was like the intentional areas. Now it's going to be slight amounts of edge corruption with the same brush. And we'll see if the effect is worthwhile. And perhaps it's not. And then we just trash it. Again. Completely up to Polly at this point in the chat. Thoughts and prayers to him. Alright, Polly. Before. I'm sorry, this is before, this is after, this is before, this is after. What is the verdict? Right side looks straight, left dots are a little artificial over the eye. I actually quite agree with that sentiment. I very much agree with what you just said. I don't think it adds a little bit to the piece, I'm not gonna lie. Feels a little bit cheating using a different layer, but it's digital, so, and also you guys know how I truly feel. Yeah, it has an interesting combination. So the real secret by doing this, by the way, is just select the shape that we have, and we're going to slightly soften up that shape with the texture. That gives us that freckly kind of read. So what were we talking about earlier when somebody asked the question, how do I paint freckles without having to paint every single freckle? Basically what you do, it's what I call edge corruption. So you just corrupt the edge with a suitable value. And that gives you enough of the read. Don't have to worry too much. A little bit of edge corruption. I have a nice lovely red value underneath here. Dark. Like an electrode, let me onto the broken. All over the place with this. I had a red value down here, but I've somehow lost it during the paint. Let's grab a suitable red. Appropriate, maybe that. More red on there. That's about what I'm looking for. Yeah, I think I'm ready to call this one done. Light notion. Ear back here again. Doesn't you don't have to paint the ear. Motion of an ear is fine. Some slight amounts of noise. On krita for beginners, is it good to use the first only one brush or instantly into it with a lot of brushes for a single paint? So for every painting software, I highly suggest if you're new to digital painting, please do not use a bunch of brushes. Keep things very simple and very controllable. As you develop more comfort in certain areas, slowly start to dole in discomfort by adding new options, new filters, new brushes, new tools. So at the very beginning, I really suggest just pick a very simple brush, like a round brush, for example, and just try and achieve good workflow, good paintings, good mileage with that. And once you feel comfortable, once you're not limited by just the sheer overwhelming nature of a program like this, then you can continue and you can start using ideas. Maybe integrate some more brushes, maybe you can use just a few more layers or a few more like blending modes, something like that you could do with that. But I would not suggest starting out that way. I'm a big believer in just don't artificially add complexity unless it serves your purpose. Right? Complexity is a trade-off. Right? Because the more there is, the less you can control. Have a good reason. The reason is I want to learn how to get better at krita, then it's not serving your purpose. Get that comfort first, and then you can do whatever you like. Add more brushes. As you please. But at the beginning, I tell this to everybody, pick a very easy subject matter. Pick trees, pick coral, pick rocks, pick rocky mountains. Start right there. Single brush, black and white, single layer. Small canvas. Time it for something like an hour or 2 hours. Do a bunch of those paintings. It's much more achievable. And the biggest reason behind all of this, I'm not saying that if I just drop you into deep water and say swim electrode, swim with these brushes, use them as oars. I'm not saying that you wouldn't be able to swim, but you'd have a pretty shitty time with it. You'd be very like annoyed because the results at the very beginning, you're gonna have a lot of stomach for that because maybe it's faster, maybe it's slower, maybe it's somewhere in between. But you will learn if you just do it more. But I am a big believer in the idea that you must have a lot of discipline, but when you can vie on the side of it actually really inspires you and you're enjoying what you do, right? That fulfillment aspect of it, when you can utilize that in the place of discipline, always do that. And then have the discipline, have that kind of stone-willed, taciturn attitude. You save that for a rainy day. That's how I keep myself constantly motivated. Just because when I'm really enjoying what I do, I don't need anybody to motivate me. I don't need anybody to give me a pep talk. I will always do what I need to do. But if for example, if I'm having a bad day, then well, I have not been forcing myself to do anything all this time, so I have a bunch of reserves to play on, and that's how I've been able to maintain very consistent painting over the last almost 2 years at this point. Because most of the time, I'm really enjoying what I'm doing, so I don't need to like force myself to paint. So I believe strongly in trying to like harness this kind of potential, harness this energy of just enjoying what you're doing. So I'm advising you a path which gives you kind of appreciable results that you will enjoy what you're doing and you will do more pieces of work. Okay? I'm a big believer in it. Big believer in it. Okay, I think I'm done with this painting, by the way, guys. It was really fun. But maybe roughly 2 hours work done. But on stream, that's not bad at all. Do you think learning traditional painting is essential to have a better understanding of digital art? So I'll give you some. So whenever you ask me a question, whenever anybody asks me a question, the first way I respond to it is the way that I've learned from master painters, from actual professionals, from very, very good painters. So let's talk about an artist like Craig Mullins rather. So Craig Mullins is known as the grandfather of concept art. Worked on some of the projects, some of the greatest projects of all time, stuff like Assassin's Creed, Star Wars, a whole bunch of things, right? So what he believes is that all digital artists should understand gouache painting before they start painting in digital. Okay, of all things, gouache painting. But what's the idea behind something like that? Why does somebody that good say something like that? It's because they want you to think about the fundamentals of what you're doing. Because of the amount of control we get from digital tools, we tend to really neglect the fundamental aspects of what really makes a good painting, right? Because we can start to use unlimited undos, unlimited redos, and we can just do basically whatever we like again and again and again ad nauseum and manipulate every single pixel while doing so. It creates this cavalier sense of reckless abandon that you simply would not have if you had correctly learned the fundamentals. So the answer to the question is you do not need to. Even though he says gouache painting, the idea, the principle behind that advice is you need to learn fundamentals of art, which transcends all medium, be it digital, traditional. It's transcending all of that shit. So understanding the fundamentals is the most important thing, and you can do so digitally. I have very, very seldom touched a traditional canvas for painting. I do a lot of traditional sketching in ballpoint, in ink, and in graphite, but I have never, not in the last 10 years, I have not painted anything physically. Of course, I've done some watercolor on the side, but it's like they were all terrible and never for learning. More like, hey, my friends are doing watercolor. Let me do some watercolor. Maybe one or two pieces of those in the last year. Okay? So the idea behind all of this, why people say do traditional stuff, is you need to learn the fundamentals. So if you're true to that idea, if you're true to the fundamentals, you will be a successful artist. And these days, people that are getting hired, I mean, they're almost exclusively digital artists. So it's very possible either way. But good painting is good painting. Good fundamentals are good fundamentals. There's no two ways about it. So if you want to get good in this industry, if you want to get good with painting in general, you must have a good grasp of these ideas. Doing it traditionally can be a great way of achieving these ideas, just because of the fact that it forces you that if you don't understand the fundamentals well, you will have a very shitty, unusable canvas. But if you're just very, very, not very, very strict, but just if you're just decently strict with it, and just have good information, fine, do it wherever you'd like. Ultimately, at the end of the day, thereon, any painting, good painting. If you're mindful about it, if you're regular with it, you will see improvements regardless of the medium that you use. If it's just Microsoft Paint, if you're painting using like etching, if you're painting using a mouse, like if you're just staying true to these fundamental ideas, you're fine. You'll be okay. Alright, I'm calling this piece done. Yeah, because the idea is that all pieces, they look good for a reason, especially when the styles are similar. Reason that's certain way. All of them are guided by a set of very distinct principles that is just not restricted by medium. Which is why a lot of people that are very, very good at one medium, give them another medium, you give them maybe a month to learn it, and then suddenly they're good in that other medium as well, right? Going from ink to Copic, for example, or even going from digital to traditional, or traditional to digital. Doesn't take a lot of time. I have a question. Do you go to class to learn how to draw? No, I've never had any formal education. I'm going to have formal education. I'm actually going to go to school for design. But no, up till this point, I have never had formal instruction. It's all been from online tutorials, and just a crazy amount of work. I'm gonna quickly upload this. But if you guys have any questions or any crits, this is the end of the stream, so that's time for that. Now's the time. So I don't need to upload immediately. I can just kind of play around here while I wait. But yeah, if you have any additional concerns. But no, Mr. Drew, I have not had any formal education. All been self-taught. I barely did any painting for the longest time. Started doing it again recently. Again, maybe a year and a half ago. I was very consistent. I was very consistent with it because I very much like painting. Super consistent. Always kept an open mind. And yeah, all is good, then that's how you get good. I'd call this okay. Based on my own personal taste, I think it's okay. I feel like it's a bad idea to keep this painting on my on my canvas because I'm going to keep picking at it, and I don't like picking at paintings. That's why I always have a time limit, by the way. Always have time. Not something that I recommend to everybody, but for most people that do regular work, I do recommend having some timer in the background. I don't mean to time restrict, by the way, but just in general. Raviel, how's it going? Just in general, I like having time as a metric. It tells you a lot of things. People that tell you, take as much time as you need. I agree. Especially for learning, take as much time as you need. But for mileage, for example, don't do that. Also, always have a mind for the time. You want to be taking time, but not unlimited amounts. Very true to yourself. I'm gonna hit this. Looks really good. Love the oil painting. Look, thank you. A lot of the so a lot of the research that goes into the painting was done by studying a very specific oil painter, John Lariva. But I've been trying to emulate this traditional look for a while now. Let's I upload the reference. My bad. I'm a big fan of him, so if anybody can post links to Lariva's work or Patreon, that would be very much big fan of his work. Definitely have learned a lot from doing master studies of him. If anybody's curious of what a master study is, it's when you paint somebody else's art. So you grab it as a reference and you paint it to try and figure out what they did to achieve that particular look that you like so much. It's an artistic dissection, and I highly recommend it. Especially, so don't do this for everybody, but do it for the painters that you really truly like yourself. Do it for the people that you envy, the way that you want to eventually paint like. That I think is a lot of value in doing that. I really do believe in that. And I've done a lot of master studies in my time painting last year. Here's another one that I did this one yesterday. Lovely saturated colors. Okay, let me see Glow's links really quickly because I want to stream as well. But yeah, if anybody has any references, or I'm sorry, any crits rather, put them to the Discord. I run the entire stream off the Discord, by the way, so if you ever can't catch me, you're welcome to ask me. There, holy shit, Glow! Is this actually is this Microsoft Paint? That's really good. My goodness, I'm really surprised. I know you're a good painter already, but that's quite lovely. Hope you're proud about this one. I think it's really good. Good job, man. MS Paint, my boy right here. Next level MS Paint. So good. That's a reference, by the way. I should do the same reference. Maybe we'll do it next stream. Nice job, man. I have an initial block in. How do you do these hue shifts when the entire face is so close to one value? Give me the painting that you're working on. I'll show you. Nice job, Glow. Hell yeah, dude. Just put it in the chat, would you, John? What's closed right now? We'll do that and then I'll bugger off. Go get some food. Reference. The painting. Oh, someone this. Okay, fine. I'll open it. I'll open the Discord up. Sorry. I restarted my computer. Just grab a drink of water while I wait. Cracked, and how's it going, man? Been a while? Yeah, I have not been streaming, man. A lot of things going on in my life, but I'm happy to get a stream in here. Wondering what we just finished painting. First of all, praise Inner Glow for making this incredible piece of artwork in Microsoft Paint. Far more impressive than anything I've accomplished. But we just finished this painting over here. About 2 hours left. You sharpen up some edges. How do I get the color shift? Click edit colors and then change the lum numbers. What are you, a comedian? Don't like how harsh this little edge here. Like I said, I'm gonna pick away at this stuff if I keep looking at it. I very seldom paint with fresh eyes. My eyes are always sometimes gonna be affected some way or the other. Glad to see you're still doing art a lot. Yeah, I mean I've been doing so much painting off stream, so much drawing. I just got into art school, by the way, so doing a lot in the future as well. Okay. What did John post? And I look at electrodes as well. One second, just doing some stuff. If I could change one thing about my current build of Krita, there's a bug in exporting. Always messes things up that I would solve that. Okay, so John has this little reference. I think this is also from Maddie's. There his piece. Piece is here. Okay. Let's look at this. Well, and we'll grab that reference. And there's a lot of quality. Okay, so a couple of really quick fixes. I'm not going to do too much initial talking. I like to do initial talking because that's when I get principles out of the way, but hopefully I get them while I'm painting. I'm going to grab a simple brush here, go over this. Okay, so this is the idea, John. First of all, be a little bit careful, be doubly, triply, quadruply careful about white on a canvas because it has a crazy effect to skew the read it's going to have. So the first thing I want you to do before you do anything else on the canvas is just do something like this. Get rid of the white. So I'll trim it down, maybe even trim it even further. But we don't want that white there, it really does affect, because remember everything on the canvas is going to affect everything else on the canvas. Every painting is contextual within itself, so always remember to just make context every single time. Otherwise things start to look a little bit weird, especially when you're basing things off the reference a lot more. And you're not comfortable translating like various different ideas. Really, really important. Just have everything nice and unified. So, nice and covered, because again, that white's a big problem, right? You want to get rid of it. Because now, you see how much brighter the skin looks because of that change? Because now this becomes like, mainly kind of the focal area, the focal point, kind of have those values where you kind of want them to be. Alright? So, also we can, at this point, maybe slightly do this. So it doesn't take us any more time, right? It takes us barely any time to do this. But it makes the painting look so much more finished, right? Suddenly, because we don't have that empty area of light. Just randomly randomly affects our read. Literally, it's the end of the stream. Thank you for the follow, by the way, Dasher Queen. Alright, let's just calm down a little bit more. Okay, so that's the first thing that I want you to change. Be very careful. The second you get rid of that white, it makes your decision making so much easier. Remember that, like when we're doing paintings like this, for example, that's the first thing that I do. I get rid of that white. because it's going to skew your ability to read light against darks quite severely, especially on a canvas. Maybe not on your reference, but on your canvas particular, it's going to really affect it. And that's going to cost you a bunch of time. Because if you get those initial kind of colors wrong and then you decide to fill in the background, you go, okay, wait a second, now things look a little bit different because suddenly the entire context of the piece has changed. Okay, so be careful. In fact, in this particular piece, I would want it to go greener. So just paint something vaguely. You don't have to be anywhere specific. Just a vague rather temperature idea. So dark green. So just really vague. That's it. Why is it green instead of blue? Because I want to show the blue of the shirt. Okay. Way green. Just like that. Done. Doesn't take us any time. Okay, so now we come to your question. The question is, I'm in my blocking phase and I want to get more ideas, more variations of color because John likes the color variations that are on portraits like this, for example. So it's not just one solid idea. I thought the splash of paint was enough to keep it fine. I also check regularly with proof setup. It'll save you more time, I feel like. I think it's just one of those best habits because, I mean, can we really justify a reason to not do that? Because it takes us maybe 2 seconds of our time. Just a fill tool, gradient tool is enough. So why not just do that and aid in our like reading process? Why make things intentionally difficult? Like unless there's something to be gained, then why do it, right? Because there's nothing to be gained. You don't even gain time. So you may as well just, just have the good rule of thumb in there. Don't make things too hard for yourself. Okay. So the question is, how do I get selective ideas of color? Kind of like the look of the background, that's why. You like to look at the background before with the white in there? Well, maybe it's a taste issue, but if that's going to be the case, then have a temporary layer and have that layer relative to the same value as this, because that white doesn't exist in this canvas. So if the white were to exist, the dynamics of this canvas would change. So unless you're willing to accommodate for that dynamic change, you're going to be painting something that looks very isolated. Okay? So just to consider, just why that makes some sense. So you can make stylistic changes to the background, there's no issue, but it needs to be handled. You're kind of giving yourself more work. So if you want to do more work, I almost applaud it because I'm doing way more work than I need to by putting stuff like this blue pink here. It's a lot to problem solve. That's perfectly fine. If it's intentional, then it's intentional. Coming down to your question. Your question is, how do I get temperature changes? This is the logic, okay? So we're going to base it off of a couple of things. The first one we'll talk about, maybe the only one we'll talk about right now, is maybe zones of color. So right now what I'm really thinking about is, I want to think about these areas on the do this, get that, this. So things like this. This little area over here, very top, is going to go more towards that yellowish idea. Little area over here in the middle, the eyes and near the nose, it's going to go more red. The area over here on the bottom is going to go more desat, very red. That's like the general rule of thumb. And of course, there's going to be specific things on the piece that are going to make variations in the color. We can get to that in a second. Things like subsurface scattering, for example. Make the blue light darker because it really barely shows. The blue light darker. Well, if you want to make a light more evident on the piece, well, you don't make it darker, you make it lighter or you make it saturated. So that's how you show, because light is basically what's causing the color and the value shift, right? So it's a question of color and value. So how do you make a light stronger? Imagine strengthening a light. What happens, right? So imagine you have a torch in your hand, you want to show more of an effect of the torch. You bring the torch closer to the wall. What happens? The wall gets lighter in that area. The shadow lines become much more distinct as a consequence of it becoming much more direct. And the color, if the light source is colored, the color becomes a lot stronger. Okay, so if you want to show more blue, for instance, then 100% you need to get rid of this background because it's hard to show blue against blue. So this background becomes maybe even something like a, dare I say, a warm, to show more of that blue. And to get to go even lighter. Yeah, that's fine. So you can solve it in saturation as well. There's no issue with that. In fact, if you had a proper, I mean, you don't have the entire value range I expect, but if, for example, if you presented a proper value hierarchy piece, I would only say color because you don't want to be adding too many more values. So your head's in the right place with that idea. And I don't disagree. I think with saturation is probably correct. So we're going to throw a little bit more on there. We could probably make something like this work if we needed to. But remember, this blue is going to be affected strongly, because if I had this kind of blue over here, that blue barely starts to have an effect. So it's against the gray now, but now it has an effect. Now it's a solid effect. And I can even amp that even further, because remember, this idea of what is the value, what is the color, it's a very relative thing. So I can make this blue look even more blue by adding more saturated orange or warmer elements around it. So now it looks even more bluer than it was before. Alternatively, I could add more dark elements around it, make it look lighter. These are the things that you play with when you change the background, for example. These are the things that you unlock, right? It's like you're adding more difficulty to the piece, but you unlock new abilities. This is the ability you unlock. So you can get more of a read that way. So remember, you can play around with this idea. Okay? We'll just leave that in there for the time being. Why not? How's it going, Spectre? So again, now we'll do some slight little zonal variations of color, right? So I'll just do it based on your local color. So I want to bring these areas over here more towards the reds. Again, slight variation. It's redder. See what I'm doing? I'm sampling the local, shifting it more saturated that way. More red, more red, more red. One's over here, shifting it more yellow, more saturated. Yellow, yellow. Sometimes there's exceptions. For example, up here, exception, subsurface. Subsurface exception has to be kind of handled right there. Over here is going to be nice, deep, bit of red. Again, it's an occlusion on the eye, so that's going to be red. Down here, for example, saturation, my old chum, sorry to abandon. I remember your first paintings when it was overly saturated. I think it's time to bring a little bit of the energy back, because now you're more skilled, now you're more confident, now you're more equipped to deal with that power. Like the Infinity Stones, you know? You kind of leveled up a little bit. Now you can maybe employ them a little bit more. Even down here, for example, bring more orange. So now you see we have more of a temperature variance. It's all justified by facts and logic. Right. That's kind of right. And we can show more of this blue light as well. Well, in this particular case, this blue light will be called a key light. We can show more of the effect of the key light. So when does something become a local color, like paint? And when does it become a light source? It becomes a light source when it's more pronounced all around the piece. When you have that interaction of light and surface that you're looking for. So the more I kind of paint around with that same blue, the more I show it, the more it looks like it's a light source. Okay? That's a big thing. If something's not looking like a light source, it's because it's not affecting the piece as a light source would. Just go back to basics, go back to your interaction of light and surface, make sure that everything's interacting in the proper manner. So this purple is because it needs to transition from blue to skin color. The transition happens through a purple. Do you mind me asking, is there a specific reason using krita? Do you prefer it more than PS? I just started painting with krita. I never found a really strong reason to not do so. Like, I can do everything that I really need to. And at this point, I would rather just get pieces out of the way, because I always have something to work on. And also specifically stream-wise, because I have PS and I use it every now and again. But stream-wise, I always stream with krita as a rule, because it's more accessible for people. It jumps in and they say, well, you know, I don't have Photoshop. I'll say, well, neither do I. It's not technically correct, but it wouldn't matter if I didn't. So the ability that Photoshop grants me, like the convenience, is like maybe accounts for maybe 1 to 2% increase in the quality of my work, and I just don't care for it. I think it's fine. Even if that, right? Mostly because of maybe it runs better on my computer. So now we have some hue variation, right? Went from this. I think whenever it goes lighter, for example, goes lighter, goes more blue. It's not because of the brush engine, because I think it's better than the PS. I disagree. I think the PS brush engine is about as good. And just the sheer amount of like brushes and the mixer brush, for example, on PS is reason enough that I would maybe consider switching. I was going to actually consider switching because of the mixer brush, and then I found some decent alternatives on krita. But does this kind of make some sense, John? Are you changing values too? Most of the change in value is because you're missing shadows. Laura, thank you for the raid. I do appreciate you. Sorry, I had to open up my chat there. I'm doing a bit of a crit for a viewer right now. I'm at the end of my stream. Me, the Polish Vikings, are raiding a channel with love. Well, thank you. I do. If you want to post any work or something, welcome to. Mr. Pike, you gorgeous bean. How's it going? Hope you're doing well. Welcome, man. We just finished doing some paintings myself. These are a couple of portraits that I've done. I did the left one on stream. I did the right one maybe about 3 AM yesterday. But some examples of my work and some other stuff that I've done in the past. I don't have too much to show today on this canvas, but if you want to see any more of my stuff, it's all on the Instagram for you. Thanks for that. Do appreciate it. Okay, so that's the kind of idea, John. So I am indeed changing the value. In general, when you want to make your, so this is the rule, okay, John? So I think the rule is important to think about. So when your light kind of changes values, you got to remember that it's going to have an effect on the color, okay? So when your light goes from lighter to darker, and it's the exact same material, okay? It's going to have a very palpable effect on the color space. Okay, because remember, the color, a lot of the color changes in a piece, it comes from this light. So the less light there is, the less color there is from your light source. Okay? So you're going to have a lot of variation just incidentally from that. So what I'm introducing in my pieces is almost like an artificial amount of vibrancy. But before you get to this kind of stage, I think it's important to just think about the regular bits of color changing that happen, okay? Regular amounts of changes that happen. So maybe maybe should be the primary focus at this stage. But that's the idea, right? So you can't go lighter or darker on the same material without it having a lot of change to the color. And by a lot, I mean something that's perceivable. Not so much that there's a color contrast, but a perceivable change, right? For instance, if the skin, I'll give you one example here. So if the skin turned from this front-facing plane to the side-facing plane, it'll go from being affected by my light source, which is somewhat cooler, to being more affected by my fill light, which is warmer. And that's why it goes from cooler to warm. Okay, that kind of idea. But I want to start you on this kind of idea first. I feel like would be kick off for me, Laura. Let me see. Apologies. Oh, you're Mr. Randonese's friend. Any friend of Azar is a friend of mine. Big fan of Mr. Randonese. Did you by chance see that body pillow I drew for him? Well, I know that you drew art. It's very good. Big fan of that. Go check out Laura's Instagram. I'm gonna give you a follow. Did you see that body pillow I drew for him? Okay, avert your eye stream. Maybe a little bit graphic. It's about as bad as you think it is. If you're under 18, by the way, no, don't watch my stream. I don't saw it. Okay, well, this is my Azar body pillow. I don't think I can legally show lower than this. As much as you're getting, but there's a full version available for tier 3 subs. There's a full version available. So yeah, if you want to get the full version, to me and Azar. Kind of harassment? No. I asked for permission.
Lower.
Lower. You got a bit of a glimpse. I'm gonna sue you if you ban me again. I genuinely came into his chat and I said, hey Azar, if I draw body pillow, will you monetize it and we can split the proceeds? And he said, yeah, so I drew it. Yeah, go follow Laura. Thanks for the bits, Polly. But hopefully this makes some sense. There's no way he gave you permission to draw him like that. Well, listen, Abs, that's how you get from being just clean. You know, just being a clean-ass human being. Like, when I request something, it's done just oh so cleanly. Monkey's paw, yeah? Monkey's paw. I think you can evoke that right now. John, you good on this one? Because I can move on to the next crit. Any questions? I was talking about the cheek, it feels darker. Okay, so maybe this is the last thing I'll get you thinking about is that when, so consider the fact that you have certain limited values in your piece, okay? So you have some darks and you have some lights. Most of the time, until you get to the very end of your piece, you want to maintain your values. But then you can easily say that, okay, well, there's so many variations on my canvas, on my reference, I want to capture some of these variations. So you want to get something called a false value read. I think, who calls it that? Might be one of the old painters. But generally the idea behind that, fancy words aside, is that when you saturate a color, you darken it. I'll give you an example. So let's just take the edge condition, light, just pure white. I'll slowly begin to saturate. You see how it's becoming darker and darker and darker? The impression of it, like the visual impression of it becomes darker. False value. I'm gonna show up my words. You're gonna have to shush, Spectre, or Spectre. But that's the idea, okay? So it's gonna have a slightly darkening effect, but that shouldn't matter too much as long as you're kind of considering your values properly. So that's an idea. So maybe the next time that you want to go darker and you think, if I go darker, I'm gonna mess up my value scheme. You can actually saturate, and that's a solution. So many angles you're gonna attack a reference at. So a little bit of fundamental theory there. I don't know if you can apply it right now because at this stage of the painting, but maybe further on, if you find yourself really limited by the value space, then that's something you can do. Okay, last crit for the day, electrode. Ooh, very nice. It's the Joker, baby. Joaquin Phoenix in here. On oils, it's called false value. So from it you build up or down the value. Yeah, there you go. I learned it from an oil painter as well. Last time I saw this in writing was from Richard Schmidt's book, Alla Prima. Great book. Thank you to who's the one that gave it to me? Solmer? Thanks, Solmer. There you go, John. That's yours. Hopefully there was something you could take away from that. Doing this a little bit quicker than I usually do. Ben? Not me? Okay, for somebody else then. I should probably remember. Remember. Alright, electrode. Reference. So thoughts, concerns, objectives? What's up with this piece? Give me some background. Okay, so I didn't paint for a while, so I was answering some messages. And I like the Joker film. Okay, so let's just think about this as a general kind of crit. Sorry about that, my thing cut out. So what can we consider to kind of elevate this painting? I'll give you a couple of things. Okay? Water really quickly. The first one is edges. So we can introduce, we have some soft edges, we have some hard edges, but a very common thing to miss that we're really missing some some lost edges in the painting. Okay? So let's add some lost edges. So what I'm going to really grab right now is I'm going to grab a very simple airbrush. Okay? And I'm going to grab this background value. I'm going to start to gradually fade that over there into the background. I'm going to gradually fade this into the background. The idea is that everybody wants to kind of reveal everything about their painting, but this is oftentimes a mistake because that's not how you perceive reality. Okay, so just gradually kind of fading these kind of things away into the darkness. You have very, very gives you an edge that was completely missing from the painting. Lost edge. Really, really important to have these in your painting, especially if you want to go for a more traditional, more impactful look to the painting. See what that kind of does? It fades away. Super, super important. As long as your edges are managed quite well, adding some lost edges is a fantastic way to add more of a sense of like dynamic range into the edges and just add much more believability to your reference. Fundamental aspects of how we perceive reality. Lost edges is a big deal. Putting those in is a really, really good thing. Also, we can start to maybe unify some shapes, maybe start to unite some shapes rather. So we see some large readable shapes. I think it's really important to capture these shapes when they're so easy to see. Things like this, for example, we have one big shape in here. But I think if you kind of think about your shapes in this manner, your painting becomes really a bunch of puzzle pieces put together. Because that's a very simple shape, right? Maybe you don't exactly see that shape on the reference, but I see it, and maybe you see something similar, right? So if we just go to the act of just kind of finding that shape and then painting it in there, it makes kind of getting accuracy, getting a better read, makes it really, really easier.
Oh, fuck. I can't believe you've done this.
Alright, Solmer. It's a lot easier. See how that kind of fades back in? It's a very simple kind of shape, but it's really important. A lot of people that start painting, they don't understand the idea of shape, but shape is like those fundamental building blocks. It's what allows you to simplify what you're looking at, and that's so valuable. Because if you get on a train of trying to get every single little detail right, you're going to be painting that painting forever, because you can't capture something with the fidelity of a camera. So it's down to you to kind of describe what you're seeing. A simple, readable, effective format, and that's what painting is about. Because we're not after hyper-realistic rendering here, we're after just realism. So realistically trying to portray something in a simple, readable, clear, distinct fashion, right? That's painting to me, especially this kind of painting. So same thing over here, right? Just instead of looking at this so as much of a lip, for example, maybe just think about this as a dark shape. Dark shape, what does it look like? It looks like a lion's tail kind of spread outwards. Do I see a lion's tail spread outwards? Maybe not much. I see the tail. Maybe it could be a little bit thinner, but I don't see that spread outwards part. So let me paint it in there. Now this might seem silly to you, but it's a big deal because this is how you ensure accuracy in your paintings. Because what I just did there is called shape association, but there are so many methods of kind of ensuring accuracy. That's a big one. It doesn't just stop there, right? It goes down. It goes down all the way here. Maybe it even goes all the way here as well. Right? So thinking about these in these kind of terms, at least observationally at first, and then later on, as you understand the structure of these things, you'll be able to create kind of shapes like this, really impactful, strong ideas on your canvas. You'll be able to create them because you understand the structure, you understand the lighting, you're able to just make this. But for now, I think it's sufficient to just kind of capture them from your reference, okay? Background making it bigger helps. There you go. I usually address the composition elements once really early and once later on, but it does help. So the same thing over here. So that shape idea, I kind of want you to think about this right now because it took me maybe months and months and months until I figured out what shape means. And I feel like I lost a lot of progress that I could have made. I still made progress in those months, but I could have been like way ahead of where I am right now if I realized it sooner. So again, things like this, for example, we have a lovely continuous light shape like that, you know, across the nose. So we just have to draw that, right? Maybe I'll just do it with selection tool like I just showed you. That same little shape here, I'm gonna put it on a piece. That nice continuous light shape over there. The left facing side of my nose. Very distinct, very readable, very clean, very useful for painters. Okay, so shape is the second thing. The first one was lost edges. The second one was shape. Strong ideas of shape. Thirdly, maybe I'll leave you with one last final thing. With the eyes, just be aware of like what's the condition of this eye is within, right? This falls under the category of value. So the value is going to describe exactly where certain objects are and how they're oriented towards your light source, right? So this particular eye is currently in the shadow because you have this big beautiful brow casting a shadow on top. I have a bunch of darks inside. So now we're tempted to make this lighter because it's indeed a light, right? It's in a white color and there's white all around it. But this value over here seems to me a little bit too close. The values are around it over here, for example. But I want to clearly depict the idea that it's in shadow. So what do I attempt to do? What I will do is I will darken that little light value up. I'll darken it even more. Darken it up. Doesn't need to be too light, right? I'm going to darken that value up. that manner, right? So now it's a bit more strongly in the shadow, and just to kind of aid the read, kind of missing something quite key here. Also helps think about shapes as animals or letters. Yeah, that's called the phenomenon of pareidolia. And again, it's the shape association. That's the fundamental idea. If you want another formal term for that in painting. But yeah, definitely what Spectre said for that. Because all the time when you try to draw something that you think you know, you do something that's called iconographical painting, or you paint from iconography, which means you paint your idea of something rather than you paint what's actually there. So this can help a lot. So I'm just structuring your values a bit more, lighter right. Again, one nice, simple, readable shape. That's all we're gonna work with. Same thing up here, right? One nice, readable shape. Like, it seems to be a little bit of a green or blue up there. I'll just pick something that you already have here. Like that is fine. Color right there. It's a nice little readable shape. I'll do this the hardest way possible, right? The selection tool. Just select that shape. I see. Grabs the bottom side. Brow. Right? And then I'll just paint a little bit of light back in there. That bottom edge right there. And of course, we're missing some of that lovely little light that catches against. I paint this way to capture perfection. Yeah, it's up to you. I mean, it's not realistic to paint everything you see though. Paint what you paint an evocation of what you see. What realism is founded on. But again, we're talking about realism here. Realistic, could be impressionistic, could be postmodernistic, like it depends. So again, whenever I say something like as an outright fact in the stream, just remember it's for realism, it's not for anything else. So sorry, I trailed off there. The blue eye makeup. This blue eye makeup is a happy little. It's just, I'm assuming. There you go, man. So a couple of changes to the value. You see how the eye is kind of buried in some darkness now? So we're going to do a couple more changes. See that eye in general is so much more muddier, right? Because you've gotten this much right. But see how there's another shape right over there? You see how there's another shape right over there? We're missing those. Let's add all the members, okay? We'll add all the members to the team. Again, I'll do this as harsh as I can possibly do it with selection tool. Dark here, dark here. Right, and now we'll put those darknesses in. Dark, dark, right? See if we get closer. Want to get even closer? Okay, we can get even closer. We can add the idea of edges and slightly darken up this reed over here, make it a bit darker. Add, so right now this brow over here is a little bit more pronounced. In the brow, and the brow itself is actually quite dark, right? You have that base value, fine, but you're missing a shape here again. Again, I want to make you think about these shapes a bit more. Why is that caused? It's caused because this whole plane is turning inward. That's anatomical though. We don't have to get into that. Actually, if there's anybody that's intermediate in here, if you want to know what's actually happening there, think about the profile of the head. Let's draw a quick little profile here. So let me draw a quick little profile. I'm thinking about the glabella, right about there, I think. Okay, so when you think about the brow, right? The brow, it turns this way. That's the brow region. So basically this entire plane over here is facing somewhat downwards. It's facing front down, okay? But the thing is, it's not just that much. The really important thing here is that it curves underneath. It curves underneath because there's a big old eye socket here. And this flesh, it nests underneath this eye socket, okay? So what that means is that this area is turning underneath, right over there, okay? Going underneath there. Which is why you have this dark value over here, okay? So it's light going to dark because it's going underneath. The same thing is happening here, okay? So this little eye, this little flap of skin, upper eyelid, that's also going this way. It's going underneath this mask. This mask is sitting on top of this mask, right? It's not just flat. What's happening is this. We have the top side of the brow, the bottom side of the brow going underneath. We have the top eyelid, we have the bottom eyelid. What happened? One is over the other, which creates a very typical occlusion shadow here. So again, if you're Starting out stuff, maybe it's a bit too much information. But again, if you want to know where this darkness is coming from, that's where it's coming from. So that comes from structural understanding of the body. It's always good to remember these kind of things. It really does matter, especially when you start to create your own faces, your own stylizations. It really matters. But right now, we just paint from reference. It's not a big. So now we just paint what we see. Just a couple of shapes. Though. After that big discussion, that big hoopla, what are we left with? Some really simple light and dark shapes. Reference, right? And it's easy for me to spot this kind of thing because I'm looking for it now because I know structures. That's why knowing structure is important. Even if you paint from reference, please learn your structure. If you are an intermediate and you do not know structure, do so as soon as possible. Market impact. Stuff like this, for example, all of this eyebrow stuff, you don't have to paint it complicated, right? We can just simplify it. What is that in simplicity, right? Simply one light stroke, sorry, one dark stroke right over there. That's the shadow cast by the upper eyelid, and one light stroke there, right? So you can make the stroke a little bit fuzzy. Then we're gonna get exactly what we're looking for. Okay? Notion of that eyebrow. Same thing on the other side. Get that nice, beautiful, voluminous dark near the tear duct or the lacrimal caruncle. Beautiful, beautiful darkness right there. That, okay. Then just a little bit of a sprinkle, so maybe I'll extend it right over here. Just a sprinkle of that light. I get a similar read, right? Because I'm not painting exactly what is there, but I'm painting what I see. Right? I'm painting the impression of it. That's really what a lot of like painting in this in the style that I do, painting in realism is about. People think realism is about details. It's not true. It's not about details. It's a fundamental application. Trying to apply just the fundamentals to describe something in its most essential format, where all realism is going to crown. Not in the details. Don't focus on the details. It's not going to save a piece. A piece should work in its most basal form. Right? If details are required to save the piece, then the piece is already beyond saving if you plan to use just detail. The piece is faltering, it's never because of the detail on top of it. Because the fundamentals underneath it. Again, little things like the bottom eyelid catching a little bit of light, like that. You see how that gets me closer and closer and closer. The last thing to finish off the eye, just a little bit of highlight. But remember, highlight does not mean I go light like this. Highlight, like everything else on a piece, is contextual, right? It means it depends on where you are. I am in the darkness, so suddenly all of the light values are hidden from me. In the darkness. In the darkness, so I'm slightly lighter than the darkness, because the highlight. What is my current value? It's right over here. I am slightly lighter than that. I'm moving more towards my greens. A little more desaturated, and I find this value. So that it just fits instantly. Maybe a little bit of like variation required, but it just fits there, right? Maybe a little playing around with this. Maybe a little bit darker. But it can all be backed up with a lot of logic. A little bit of light right there. Light right there. Looking with some fire. Okay? We're playing around with it right now. So I'll post it in Discord for you. But that's the biggest thing that I want to initiate you on is just the way of thinking, right? It's really about like the way you kind of process the information that's given to you. But yeah, great job on the painting so far, by the way. Really good stuff. Especially for your first painting coming back, I think it's quite successful. I'll make this available to you on the Discord if you like. And if anybody else likes Chris in the future, when we look over a piece for you, I'll go ahead and check it out on the Discord. We have a channel for it, so more than welcome. On everything off the Discord, so if you want any references, any of the stuff like that. All right, this goes into yeah, good job on the prop. Props, I mean, if you want to be specific about it, it's often a couple of places, like the chin. I'm sorry, like the jaw, for example, but not enough to break it. Not enough to break it. Goddamn close. Good stuff. So much knowledge, good, a lot to learn. Yeah, it's a study stream. Not for everybody, I will admit, but I go very much into what really makes a painting a. But yeah, that's it for the stream, by the way, guys. My throat is completely on fire, and I'm very hungry. But we are done for today. quickly find somebody to raid. Thanks for hanging out today. Subs in the bits. Lovely. Yeah. We'll find somebody to love to work. Ooh, Jazz is online. I like Jazz. Friends online. Jube is online. Let's try Jazz. I like Jazz. Cheers, guys. Hopefully I'll be back tomorrow, but no guarantees. There's a lot going on that I'm just not going to talk about. You know? It's just how I deal with certain things. But there's a lot happening. It is difficult for me to get to stream, but if I will. Every single time that I've had the chance to stream last week or so, I have done so. I'm in the future, but hopefully you enjoyed today's paint along and also all of the information that was provided. Welcome to go follow me here on Instagram, on YouTube, sub, donate, whatever you like. Ultimately, this is benefiting me as much as it is benefiting you, and hopefully you try to do the same. Out does really benefit. But yeah, thank you for hanging out. I will see you hopefully when I see you next. Have a wonderful rest of your week if I don't catch you before then. As always, keep. Alright, see you later, guys. Bye.